Well, let's talk a little bit about reaching for your divinity. Let's kind of talk about this and kind of jump into this a little bit. So we kind of have that conversation around the whole concept of Ausar, Set, Heru, your divinity. Kind of talk about this, and I kind of did a part one, if you will. I want to do a part two because this has really been weighing on my mind. There are a lot of us. There are a lot of people going through things. We're going through things in terms of diseases, or we're going through things in terms of just our job or our education or just family. There are a lot of people going through things, and sometimes it could feel like really kind of overwhelming, if you will. And as I think about that, the challenges we have in life and just the experience in life should be one where we're reaching our divinity, one where we're reaching out for that. And how do we do that? How do we kind of deal with the distractions that are around us? And I think the Ausarian tell and the Kemetic way of looking at this gives us a lot of understanding with that. So I want to kind of talk about that and delve into that deeply and talk about the how and more specifics of it. So I pray and hope that if you have comments, that you'll put it down below. Share your thoughts. Let's kind of get this out with the world. Let's share things that you do, that you may do, that may be helpful to you, or that you think may be helpful to someone else as they're thinking about this. And as I think about this whole concept of Ausar, Set, and Hetheru and Heru, and just thinking about it, as the divine trio, if you will, of Ausar in the middle and there, and Aset and Heru, their son, on the far right there. So, thinking about and talking about just the idea of re-expressing your divinity, because a lot of times we're in a situation where a lot of us are not living out our purpose in life. A lot of people are literally going around life not knowing what they were supposed to do, not feeling fulfilled. And I don't want to live a life like that, and I don't want anybody to live a life like that. I really think the whole idea is for us to come here and to fulfill whatever God has for us, whatever your purpose is, whatever God has for you as your purpose. That's what you're supposed to do. That's where you have the most success. That's where you're going to have the most peace. That's where you're going to find your success in life, is the lane that God put you here to fulfill. And I think that if we were living in a society where everybody did that, imagine you were living in a society where everybody supported that and nurtured that and told you how to do it and gave you techniques, and whether it's through prayers and mantra and how do you reach to God, you would be in a society where more people would do it. Or if you're in a society where you're not given very much guidance. I think about the whole concept of Mott. And thank you so much, Pope. Thank you so much for joining. I so appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for joining. God bless you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your very good thoughts. I appreciate you guys. You're joining very much. Imagine, we have a lot of us, and I was talking to someone recently, a lot of us go through life and we are never given that guidance. And I think about the concept of Ma'at. And Ma'at, I think from a standpoint, we know Ma'at is truth. There's the 42 laws of Ma'at, if you will, Declarations of Innocence, if you will, and the Perta Maru. And thinking about that whole idea of having a set of conduct, a code of conduct. I was listening to someone preaching earlier today, and they were talking about, it was very interesting to me. They were talking about, it's not just for you to believe in God and to believe in Jesus. You actually have to pursue. There's something that you have to do. You should not have yourself be so focused on the things around you and the thing right in front of you that that your eyes are looking toward the ground and you're not looking up to what God has for you. Because sometimes when you're dealing with things, you got to look beyond what's right in front of you. And I think about it, and I thought it was a beautiful sermon. I really appreciate the message. I'm going to send a message to the person. I thought it was a really good sermon, a beautiful message. I think about that within the context of the Ausarian tale and the concept of Ausar representing the divinity in you and me. That idea that's something that for many of us is lost. Many of us, we're not living that. We're not where we want to be. I know there's more things that I want to do in life. We're not where we want to be. And as we reach for that and we try to strive for that, sometimes you got to look beyond what you see right in front of you. Sometimes you got to use, and that's where that whole concept of Hetheru, and I know I've kind of talked about this before, when you think about the idea of Ausar, representing the divinity that's in you from man, and that discipline where Aset comes in through prayer, through meditation, through monitoring. If you're not, discipline is the mother of all greatness. When you stop, discipline is the mother of all greatness, and that's why I believe Aset is really the story and the hero, if you will, of this whole story of how Ausar comes back to life, and Aset and her sister help to bring him back to life, and that they have a child, Heru, and Heru has to fight off his evil uncle, if you will, fight off his uncle, and eventually get back to the throne for himself to be the rightful heir as Ausar goes and kind of rules under the underworld, if you will, rules the afterlife. When I think about that whole idea of discipline, that whole idea of divinity in front of you, we don't really have a roadmap, right? A lot of times people will tell you that you get God's grace, you come to God and there's nothing else you have to do. And from a Kemetic standpoint, that wasn't it. And from a lot of African and general standpoints, that whole idea is that you have to live a life. Like if you are the king or the Oba, if you will, of Edo, or if you are a ruler in ancient Kush, if you were a ruler in various parts, or you were a Kemetic Nasut, your idea, and even just a person in general, if you were expected to be able to get some type of honor in the afterlife, some type of heaven or blessing, you had to live a certain life. The idea was that you had to live a life that was becoming of that, worthy of that. And then when God unleashes God's power in your life, it's because you've lived your life a certain way. And it becomes a roadmap. I've not made anybody cry. I've not hurt anybody. The idea of truly living on love, the truly living within truth, truly doing things that are right for people, that idea of living God's truth in life is actually powerful. And a lot of times we just have our children, and not just our children, our adults, we're not taught that. We're not given the laws of Ma'at. We don't talk about, don't lie. You don't steal from God. You don't even make someone feel bad, right? But a lot of these concepts, you'll find them in Islam, you'll find them in Christianity, you'll find them in various places, but we don't really talk about that as a roadmap to peace. We don't really talk about how these things kind of connect together. And as I think about that, I think about your divine discipline, I think about your divinity, that whole idea of Hetheru. And if you know anything about Hetheru, which you probably do, you know about, a lot of the hymns that were read to her and what she was representing, as a daughter of Ra. She represented, if you know the story, there's a story that Ra, who was one of the creator deities, one of the aspects of God, the force aspect of God that created the universe, right? That Ra was concerned that mankind was kind of getting kind of uppity and bucking up against Ra, and Ra thought about destroying all of mankind. This is an old tale in ancient Kemet. And when Hetheru found out that mankind was essentially disrespecting her father, she got mad. And she decided to kill all of mankind. So the story goes that she goes and she goes and travels up and down the Nile, the whole length of Kemetic area, if you will, and kills a lot of people. And she doesn't kill them all in one day. She kind of takes a little bit of rest. She comes back and she says, I'm going to get up tomorrow. I'm going to finish the job. And she was so enraged that she has an alter personality. She has another form that she comes in that talks about how when she's in that form, she can be enraged. And the other form that she comes in, she takes on that form, and she's going to get up the next day and destroy all of mankind, all of humankind, for disrespecting her father, Ra. And Ra begins to say, wait a minute. He kind of stops to say, and repents a little bit, kind of stops in this little, hey, I'm sorry that I told her that, because she is run amok. And we can't let her kill all of mankind. She's gone a little bit too far. That idea of what could be so powerful that's inside of you, not just something outside of you, because all of these deities that are Kemetic deities are aspects of you. There are things that are inside you. They're not outside of you. They're not outside of your control. They are completely within your control, which should be a peaceful thing to know that your divinity, your peace is within your control. Heteru represents your imagination. Think about your imagination. Think about meditation. Think about the things you breathe on, the things you think about. It represents the things that feed into you, the things that come and really impact your beliefs, the things that you help to kind of think on and seed on, that they grow in your life. And if you're Hetheru, if you will, if it's negative, if you're watching a lot of things on television, social media, in music, where it's literally monitoring over and over again negative things, materialistic things, things that maybe don't even, relate to God, if you will, things that make you think that you cannot do, you're going to be in a situation where you're destroying yourself. You're going to be in a situation where you feel powerless to fix the things that are going on in your world. Even today, when we have, crazy people, crazy situations in Washington, crazy situations in the White House and politically, and people may think that the power to overcome it, the power to address it, is not in them. They could not be further from the truth. You literally have a situation where you're going to have to delve into your spiritual aspect, your spiritual power, in order to make this thing work. I literally think and literally believe that as we try to fight every which way we can to fight for immigration and treating people the way you want to be treated, right? Look, talking about a law of Ma'at, right? Talking about living a law, treating somebody in need the way you would want to be treated if you were in need. That's a fundamental law. That's a fundamental rule. That's a fundamental way to praise God. I mean, Jesus tells you, love God first, love God with all your might and all your heart. And the second best rule is to treat your brothers, you treat yourself, treat your neighbors, you treat yourself. That idea of when we think about immigration, treating someone as you would want to be treated, how do we deal with that? Or that idea of people not even being able to afford to go to school or to college, or being afraid to go to school, or not getting the kind of education because they don't have resources in their areas, or people being treated mean. How can we deal with that? We are going to have to go to a spiritual power to get it. I know there are people who don't like it. I don't care, that may be what they think, but everything we're doing is not addressing it. Until we start to believe and understand that we have to go inside ourselves, that our prayer, our monitoring, that if we want to fix the problem, we become the solution. Be the solution that you want to be. Don't think that you can't have one person who has an impact. That's a crazy thing. You literally create your environment by what you think about, by the discipline you make, by the divinity you make, the things that the foundation that you lay in place. And I'll tell a story about that, because I was reading about, God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I was reading about Martin Luther King's grandfather. You can take a look at that video I did of Martin Luther King's grandfather, and he was Adam Daniel Williams. He was a remarkable preacher in Atlanta and Georgia, obviously before Martin Luther King was born. And he helped to build the foundation for his family. And while Martin Luther King was able to go to what was Morehouse and do a lot of things early on, is because he had a foundation set up for him before he was born, right? And his granddad did a lot of work. But it wasn't just his grandfather. Martin Luther King's great-grandfather, Adam Daniel Williams' dad, was also a preacher. And Adam Daniel Williams' dad, Martin Luther King's great-grandfather on his mother's side, was a preacher enslaved. And as you know, in this time, you would have people who might be enslaved and might be allowed to preach in certain restricted ways to people who were there in the community enslaved with them, right? And so the great-grandfather was a preacher. And the grandfather of Martin Luther King said he remembered as a child, because he was also born as a slave. He remembered as a child his dad just being just this remarkable speaker, his dad just being such a dynamic person that the people around him and the people in the area all wanted to hear his dad speak. Now, this is Martin Luther King's great grandfather, right, who was enslaved, a preacher as he was enslaved, and that the grandfather, Adam Daniel Williams, Martin Luther King's grandfather, was so impressed by what his dad was doing, it made him want to be a preacher. It put inside his heart the desire to be a preacher. And even when he got to Atlanta and settled down, he's born in Georgia. When he got to Atlanta and settled down, he not only, said, it's not enough for me just to preach. I need to be educated. I need to do more. And he ended up going back to school, I think at the age of 30 or 30 something, and going to what would become Morehouse College. He went there and he ended up getting a degree, before his grandson did. He ended up setting the foundation and growing that Ebenezer Baptist Church from a few people to hundreds of people, like over 700 people in a pretty short period of time, because he wouldn't stop, right? And the fire that was set in Martin Luther King's grandfather was set by his great-grandfather. You never know the type of power that you unleash. You never know that when you put yourself and you have discipline, when you start to let yourself think about what you can do, you never know what kind of seeds you are sowing. You could be changing the world. It wasn't just Martin Luther King who changed the world. It wasn't just his grandfather who changed the world, who was very active in politics. It was his great-grandfather who instilled that in his son. And when I think about that, just from a divinity standpoint, that man was living out his divinity. He was reaching across things that he couldn't see, right? And that's where your imagination comes. That's where all this is connected together. Your ability to live out your divineness is partly related to your discipline, right? Your willingness to do things even when you don't feel like doing it. Your willingness to try not to give up even when you may feel like giving up. And there's a story about Aset, and there's so many stories. There are several stories that have survived, and I've told some of them, and I'll tell some again in the future. There's so many stories that have survived where Heru and Set are fighting. Heru and his uncle are fighting. And in many of the stories, you see Set will stand up and say, in front of the company of deities as they are arguing who should be in control of the country, he would stand up and say, Set must leave. I can't have her in the room. I can't have her in my place while I am trying to argue my point, because Set was too powerful. There's even a story where they were arguing who should be in charge, Heru or should it be Set, who should take Ausar's rightful throne, even though Set had killed Ausar, who should take the rightful throne. And Set jumps up and says, my brother is not here, but I have to get Aset out. Let's go to an island. Let's go someplace that's surrounded by water and not allow Set to be with us. We need to talk without her presence, because she confuses me. She challenges. We can't have her here. And make sure that the person, the ferryman who ferries people over, does not let any woman across, especially a woman who looks like Aset, across, and let's have our conversation in our meeting there. And when they go to do that, Aset dresses and disguises herself as an older woman and goes to a ferryman and convinces him to let her go across, because he didn't think that she was Aset. She kind of tricks him. He didn't think that she was Aset, and she got across by giving him a gold ring and things of that nature. And when she gets across on the other side, she changes herself into a beautiful young woman. And when she becomes a beautiful young woman, Set, who is the the arch nemesis and enemy of her son, sees her, thinks that she's a beautiful young woman, and comes and try to talk to her. And as he goes to try to talk to her, she cries. And he says, what's wrong? What happened? She said, my son, he had an inheritance from his father, and his father died. And there's a man who came and stayed in our place, and he ended up helping us, but then he ended up wanting to take over all of our land and my son's inheritance. And he's now challenging my son for his inheritance that is my father, his father, my husband, left them. And Set gets in a rage and says, whoever would do that to a son, who would take away a son's inheritance, that person should be killed right away. That's the wrong thing to do. And then Auset revealed herself. And then Set saw she revealed herself and showed him that she was the mother and that he had been fighting against her and her son the whole time. And he knew he had been tricked. And at the end of the day, all of the deities who were fighting against Set could not fight him because he was powerful. But the only one, and remember, these are all aspects of yourself. This is not just some outside thing. The only one that was able to defeat Set, the only one that was able to fool him and get him to admit his own wrong was discipline. Was Auset. That was the only one. And so as you start to think about that concept of divinity, that concept of what you're doing, that idea of divinity becomes very significant. I want to thank you. God bless you. Thank you so much. So for the donation, I really much appreciate it. God bless you. I just want to say thank you very much. So that is very much appreciated. It helps a great deal. So I very much appreciate anything that helps. So 1999. So, and I want to make sure I pronounce your name right. Asaju, if I pronounce it wrong, let me know. But God bless you so much. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate that. That's very helpful. So I just want to say that's very helpful. So just to let you know that sometimes you think that, it's interesting to me, and I'll just share this really quickly. It's interesting to me that a lot of people will ask, sometimes people ask, should I give or should I support causes? And when I think about it, I think about an African concept, and I think about, even an African society where you had, whether it was a village or a larger urban society back, even years and years ago, and you find that the person who was a teacher and an educator was respected. We respected education. You can go back to stories, whether you're talking Timbuktu or you're talking, whatever you're talking, Kemet, you're talking people who respected those who would pass on knowledge. They respected education. You really should support what you value, right? And I know a lot of us, and we know the story, a lot of us will spend money on shoes. We spend money on things, on people who will not turn around and give those resources back to the community. We lift up people. Imagine how many people are billionaires now, right? And they don't care nothing about the people. They do nothing about them and can't even think of ways. They can think of ways to make money, but can't think of ways to change the society. And so when we pull our resources together, we should pull our resources together to help each other, right? That's why I believe, to the extent that you can, if you see somebody doing, or they're passing on education, or they're developing resources like businesses, or they're developing things, try to support them, because it is smart, right? Is educated to give to someone who will give back and help your surroundings. So I think valuing education and supporting is significant, and we should do that. And that's something that we used to do, right? The person who was a priest and a real priest, the person who was really helping out people, the person who was really willing to go to at night and pray and pray for the widow and help the children, that person was respected, right? The person who's willing to educate your children. And even, I think pretty soon, in a short period of time, we're coming up on the anniversary of Ida B. Wells' birthday, right? She was a remarkable woman. And as you probably know, she was a teacher before she became a writer. She had to become a teacher because her mother and father passed away at an early age for her, and she had to become a teacher to help support her younger siblings. She was somebody who was going around teaching other people. She was somebody who was valuing that. And I think that education is something we should value, and we should support it. If we want to see it grow, we got to give it something to grow. We should make it grow. That's what we should do. We should make it grow. And so thank you for your support. I very much appreciate it. So God bless you. Since we talk about this whole concept, that part of you, the part of you that fights your divinity, the part of you that that there's something you should do. That there's a purpose that you have in life, but you somehow, when it comes down to it, you can't make that choice. It's kind of like you're in a situation where you got that cookie or that junk food and you shouldn't eat it, and you eat it anyway, and you can't stop yourself, and you eat it, right? Like I've had cookies, right, in my life, and sometimes in the very recent past, but can you stop yourself from doing it when it's not good for you? That whole aspect of lack of divinity, lack of discipline comes in. Can you put that forward? God bless you so much, Poet Williams. Thank you very much. That is very much important and appreciated. Thank you. So I very much appreciate that. That is very much appreciated. Thank you so much. God bless you. I appreciate you. And I think I know I can say your name right, Rick. Right there you go. Thank you so much. I just really much appreciate that. That support moves forward, and God bless you, because I really believe that as we lead leadership in that way, God bless you. Thank you. As we lead in that way, as we support the things that are significant, that's how we grow. And I don't believe it should be a situation where it's all like kept in one person. That's ridiculous. I think that the resources we have, we should spread out. You give to one, the other person gives to the other. You end up having a community where your resources are spread around, and the person who makes the shoes, the person who makes the clothes, the person who does the education, the person who works on the library, the person who's a doctor who helps you out, the person who's helping you pray, the person who's fixing your food, we're all supporting. That's how you make a community grow, is that you support it, and that it should spread around. And we have a lot of people in our lives who don't necessarily, in our communities, who don't necessarily give back. I mean, that's just the truth. So I mean, that's just, God bless you. Thank you guys so much. I so much appreciate your support. Very much. It's very much appreciated. We have a lot of people that we raise who get money, and they actually sing about this, talking about Hetheru, thinking about song and imagination, and what our children, and it's not just our children, it's our adults. We listen to songs that we mantra on, and we haven't even done the diagnosis of what it does to our soul, right? How listening to things that really tear you down and talk about negative things, and listening to it over and over again and mantraing just because it has a good beat, is tearing you down and changing your beliefs, right? Why don't we just flip it and have a good message and a good beat? We can make music, we can have a good beat. But that idea of being able to be faced with something, knowing what you should do, knowing that you have bad things feeding into you, but not having the ability to do it. We all face it, right? Why don't you have the discipline? This is the question I ask myself, because I believe the discipline is the mother of all greatness. If you were trying to be, I don't care if you're Ali or you are LeBron James or you are you, right? Most importantly, discipline is the mother of all greatness. And when we understand that and accept that, we begin to understand what's blocking that. If there's something that's blocking our discipline, I bet you it has to do with our Hetheru. I bet you it has to do with imagination. I bet you almost 100% is something that you're feeding into yourself. And that's what I found. And I'd be interested to see what you think. A lot of times when you think you can't do, a lot of times when you don't have a discipline, you are taking your mind and thinking about things that have nothing to do with your divinity, that have nothing to do with getting you out of the space where you are. When I was a young person and I was in school, in college, for the first 3 weeks of school, we had a certain class that we had to take. And the professor, he was a very fun guy. He was a funny guy. He had us do an assignment. And he said, you're going to get this graph, you're going to get this paper, you're going to take this kind of like a diary, and you're going to document every hour, just almost every minute. You can do it by the hour, but you're going to document everything you do for the first 3 weeks. So I want you to actually map this out. And I took the assignment seriously because I wanted to know. He said, a lot of people come into school, into college, and they think that they're doing all the studying, and they're not studying as much as they think. I want you to account for every hour of the day, including when you sleep, how much homework you do, when you eat, when you go to the cafeteria, whatever if you go out and you party, whatever, account for how much studying, and do it for the first 3 weeks. And you're going to come back and turn this assignment in. And I did it. And I remember, wow, I sleep a lot. I was thinking, I do a lot of sleeping. I must sleep more than I need to sleep, right? But thinking about, sometimes you think you're doing something and you think you're accomplishing something and you're not doing really what you want to do. And a lot of times you have to ask yourself, what's happening? Why do I have a situation where I'm not accomplishing the things I need to accomplish? A lot of that, almost all the time, it has to, what's feeding into you? Like, what do you think? I thought sleeping was just the bee's knees. What types of things that are anti-discipline, that are anti your divinity, are you spending time listening to? That's what I ask myself. What am I listening? And I'm telling you, when I cut out the distractions, it's beautiful. When you cut it out, and God bless you, just thank you again. Hotep, Amen Ra. Thank you guys. Poet Williams, and I make sure I do about Aset, if I put it right. Thank you so much. God bless you. And Hotep, Derek Thomas, God bless you. So asking yourself the question, because I'm sure there are a lot of people on this chat here who also have expertise in this area that can help people out, right? Asking yourself the question, what am I doing? What am I listening to that's blocking my divinity? Because nothing should block it. The only thing that can stop you is you. The only thing that can stop you from having peace, the only thing that can stop you from turning this thing around, even what's going on in Washington, even things that's happening right that scene, the only thing that can stop you is you. You literally have the ability to do it. And people who don't believe that, people are not in touch with their divinity. You literally have the ability to do it. But God's not waiting for us just to talk about. God is waiting for us to actualize, right? To really take this stuff seriously. It's not about us, just saying, oh, what our Kemetic ancestors were practicing, what our ancient, African ancestors were practicing, even in West Africa, South South Africa, various places, East Africa, what they were practicing. Oh, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, I hear people say that or allude to it all the time. And I'd love to hear what you think. Tell me what you think. A lot of people will give lip service to the types of practices and the essence of it. And I'm not saying you go back and you have to act like you're living tens of thousands of years ago and do the exact same thing. The essence of what they were doing, the essence of their commitment, the essence of understanding that everything is moving by divinity, the essence of understanding that you are a divine being, the essence of understanding that if you start to see the things underneath, it's like what's on the, if you look at a ground, I like to use the analogy of seeds and flowers and things growing. A lot of times, obviously, many things you see, they're going on underground. The seeds are growing, the roots are taking root. Those things are happening and taking place underground long before they come up. And all your ancestors were saying is that this all connects. They were all saying this is all a part of you. When you think about your Aset, your divinity, your courage to do the right thing, what you put in your mind, this is all a part of you. It's all a part of your spirit. And I really believe that when we think about the mind and we think about the spirit, because your mind is just an extension of your spirit. You literally are thinking about things, and your mind is somewhat limited, right? It could be limitless to some extent, but it has to be driven in a certain way. Your spirit has no boundaries. You will do things not even thinking about it, and things you just never thought you would do. Your spirit has no boundaries. It's almost like you're talking about two halves of the same whole, if you will. And your spirit being an extension of your mind, and your mind an extension of your spirit. That whole idea that's there. And so you start to think about this is all aspects of you. This is you, right? This is you. And so there's nothing stopping you. You literally can delve into the underlying energies of things that are happening. You can talk to somebody right now, today. You can talk to a young man and touch that young man's heart and make him do something different with your energy. And when you talk spirit to spirit, soul to soul, you will impact people. You will have an effect on people, right? And you said my name right. Oh, thank you. I very much appreciate it. Well, other people say are allowed to do, but remember, their tests are different. So our disciplines will be different. You know, that is a very good point. That's a very smart point. That's a very astute point, because I was thinking about that today. Not only because you think about that, you know, because a lot of people talk about eating, right? And a lot of times I know people with different ailments, and a way one person might have to eat because of their particular set of ailments and challenges might be different than the way another person has to eat, right? Some person can indulge in this and it's okay, or a certain type of vegetable or fruit, whatever it is, and another person has to stay away from certain things. So just like your challenges are different, your discipline, your diet might be different, right? The things you take in might be slightly different, and it doesn't mean it's wrong, right? It doesn't mean it's wrong. You have to understand that you might have to customize things for yourself. But as I was thinking about that whole idea, so thank you, God bless you for saying that. That's the right thing to say. I think that's important. That whole idea of being able to talk to someone's soul. I was at a conference, a meeting one time a while ago, and it was a meeting. It was like a gang council. It was a meeting for like working with young people who were part of gangs, and people could come. And I was there, and I remember, you know, talking to some young people, and I was in a classroom, and it was a gentleman who was speaking, and it was there were some young men there and women who were gang members, and they were being talked to by this person. And one of the young men raised his hand, and he talked about smoking reefer. He talked about smoking marijuana and things like that, and whether or not that would have an impact on his ability to have a child. Because he talked about him, he was only like 16. And he talked about him, you know, about to have a child, but the young lady miscarried. And he wondered if dabbling in drugs could have affected the baby. And this was a question he asked. And I thought to myself, wow, this guy is 16 and he's talking about having a child, and we're not, just the ramifications of that. And what would have happened, just the ramifications of that. And we were talking a little about school, and I just raised my hand and I said, you know, a lot of people here are talking, a lot of us talk about not being afraid of anything, that, you know, we would fight the police. You told us that you're not afraid, but you're afraid to stand up in class or raise your hand and ask for help in math. You're afraid to do certain things in life that will actually make you be honest with yourself about what your fears are. There's no reason to fake it, right? As I was talking, and I was kind of talking to the young man and talking to the group, after it was over, the young man came and he just sat beside me, sat in front of me at lunch, and brought his lunch over. And he said, you know, I just wanted to talk to you because what you were saying resonated with me. You know, you're right. A lot of our friends and a lot of my friends, we talk big tough, but we don't really do the things we should be doing when it comes to education. You're right. That what you said about math, that's right. I'd rather talk to you and hear more of what you have to say than what some of these other people are saying. And we just sat and talked. This young man who I'd not known who was supposedly a person or part of a gang, young man, 16 years old. How can you reach them? How can I talk to somebody who you might think you have nothing in common with, but to be able to just strip it down and talk soul to soul, you can move mountains. You never know what that did for that young man. You never know what he became. He seemed like he was a very bright young man. I hope he did wonderful things with his life and is doing wonderful things with life. You never know what you can do when you start to work on your divinity. It isn't always something that's going to be televised. It isn't always something that's going to be on TV or you get accolades. Your accolades are peace. Your accolades, your joy, your reward is peace. That is the currency of the universe. Whether you call it peace or love, that is your reward. A lot of people think of it, your reward is peace. And so how do you manifest peace? Because when you're living in peace, and it's a force, it's a power. When you're living in peace, you have no resistance and you're at peace and there's no resistance to you. You're actualizing your life. You're actualizing your truth. And that combination, I believe, of divine discipline, of being disciplined, of realizing that you have a divinity and a purpose, and then feeding yourself, whether that's through music, whether that's through prayer, whether that's through things you watch and beliefs, things that reinforce your divinity, not things take away from it, and then having the courage, right? Because we're always going to be in that situation. There's this little thing called faith. I was thinking about this today. When you're dealing with big things, when you're dealing with your divinity, you're going to sometimes not be able to see beyond the horizon. You're not going to be able to see beyond this next step. And it's going to take some courage. It's going to take some faith. And faith is really just an understanding of what you know but can't see. Something that you know is real. You ever been in a situation where you know something is taking place, but you may not quite see it or touch it, right? I was telling someone yesterday, my son, I was telling, one time I was in school as a young person and I was sitting there and I was, talking to teaching. We had just learned a few days that we have 5 senses, right? And, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, so forth. And I could feel someone looking at me, I just knew somebody was staring at me. Right. And I didn't see him. I didn't touch him, didn't smell him, didn't taste him. I didn't do any of those things. But when I looked around, the person was just staring right at me. You have other things. You have forces and energy. You have the ability to say that there are things underneath that you don't quite see beyond this horizon. The things that are right in front of you, there's something just beyond that. And that's what your ancestors were dealing with. When we talk about the courage, the Heru, to step into that. So as you begin to surround yourself with imaginative things that reinforce your divinity, that tell you are divine, they're telling you the truth. When you start to talk to things and listen to people who are telling you the truth about yourself, when they tell you that you are divine, when they tell you that you can accomplish it, when they tell you that it's possible, that you have a divinity, you have a purpose to fulfill, you have a divine purpose to fulfill, when they're telling you the truth, when you start to surround yourself with things that are feeding that and nurturing it and saying, what does that pathway look like? And then you start to say, I'm going to go ahead and be disciplined. I'm going to continue to pray. I'm going to not step off the path, even though I might be afraid, even though I might be tired. I'm going to go ahead and stick to it and have the courage, right, to make this decision. Have the courage to look beyond. And it doesn't require so much courage when you stop putting things in your mind that tell you can't do it. When you reinforce your divinity by the things you feed into your mind, it is not as courageous as you think, because you begin to naturally go that way. You begin to naturally have the will and choose the right path. And all of a sudden you find yourself in peace. And when you really think about it, one thing I want to impress is that the reward that you get, the accolades, is peace. That's the currency of the universe. I really believe that peace is the currency of the universe. That's the thing that gets you to the next. That's the thing that opens the door. When you think about, from a Kemetic standpoint, being the halls of Ma'at and standing in front of, if you've read the Pertin Ru, maybe we'll talk about that again, standing in front of the Pertin Ru and being able to say to the door and say the correct name. You had to say the correct name of the door and the handle and the hinge, and say the correct names of the deities as you were going by, and to be able to speak the correct things as you went to Ausar. To be able to say that you're living in truth. When you are speaking in truth, it is the door that opens things for you. It's what opens that door. It's the door that opens pathways for you. It's peace, right? And that is your currency. That's your reward. That's what God gives you for doing the right thing, is to be able to live in peace. And so God bless you. I'd love to hear some of the things more that you're talking about just here, because I really think you have a lot of conversations, right? So I really appreciate that. Please share your thoughts with it. I really believe peace is the way to kind of move forward. And I'm going to share more of it. And I'd love to hear, as I kind of circle back and go into the chat, things that how do you maintain your peace? Like, how do you get to the point where you are nurturing a good mindset, a correct mindset? We talk about protecting the peace, even a healthy mentality, right? A healthy spirit. And how do you share that with other people, young men, young women that you may be talking to? How do you share that? How do you just protect your peace and nurture your peace as you move forward? So I'd love to hear, God bless you, what you're sharing. So I just wanted to say that. And I want to thank you, everyone, for joining, because we're going to kind of talk more as we go through this and just deal with that whole idea, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? How do you begin to actualize your peace, realize it, and live like that according to what you're doing and moving forward? So God bless you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be coming back soon. Thank you so much for support. Thank you for joining me, and God bless you. I'll talk to you very soon. Thank you.